All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Patriot Ground. Today is June 23rd, 2026. Thank you so much for joining me, folks, to discover the truth beneath the surface. As always, I really do appreciate everybody out there taking the time to listen. And tonight, I have the pleasure of once again welcoming my good friend, the great Lieutenant Colonel Riccardo Bosi, back to the show. He's certainly no stranger to this audience. As folks know, Rick is the leader of Australia One. He is also a former Special Forces operator, a military consultant, and author of the great book, Greatness Awaits You. And I happen to have a signed copy of that, which I'm going to cherish always. Rick sent me a couple of months ago, but he is a man who is certainly widely known and respected around the world for his contributions to the truth community and his commitment to keeping all of us informed as the Q operation continues to unfold. And certainly it is, as Rick and I were just discussing backstage. My good friend, it is so great to see you again after about 6 months. It's been way too long. How are you, and how's everything going down under?
Well, it couldn't be better. The sun is warm. The girls are gorgeous. The sand on the beach is pristine. Apart from the Masonic filth it inhabits, this continent, it's a great place to be.
Got to focus on the positive, though, right?
Absolutely. No, we're doing well. It has been too long, mate. I've missed our conversations. I think the viewers have too. So it's great to see you. Thank you for your kind invitation. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Well, of course, it's always an honor to have you on the show. And these conversations, I certainly thoroughly enjoy at a personal level, but as you indicated, the audience does as well. So let's go ahead and give them a good show. We certainly have a lot to talk about. Like I said, it's been about 6 months since Rick and I sat down, and my goodness, so much has transpired since then. So I thought maybe we could start out talking a little bit about the geopolitical picture. Now, for the past several months, the geopolitical maneuvering has kind of taken center stage. I think you would probably agree with the events unfolding in the Middle East going back to March. And since the drama in Iran began, you and I really haven't had the opportunity to discuss all the different angles. So that's kind of where I wanted to begin the show tonight. Now, in past conversations, we've both been in agreement, and a lot of this, of course, I learned from you and your background, that kinetic action was coming in multiple different spheres of influence around the world in order to eliminate various different cabal hotspots. But that the public-facing narrative would be woven together by the white hats for strategic purposes in order to psychologically prompt the public to focus on the issues central to the Great Awakening, forcing conversations and thereby moving the needle, so to speak, on consciousness. And this, of course, is consistent with fifth-generation warfare tactics, executing kinetic operations while spinning a cover story with psyops in order to gradually win the hearts and minds of the people, which, as you pointed out on our shows together several times, is the high ground necessary for victory in any form of warfare. And certainly we know that Iran and Israel are deep state proxy nations that the cabal planned on pitting against one another as one of the many trigger points for World War III. And I believe that the objective of going into Iran was to neutralize deep state remnants and outposts, if you will. I highly doubt personally that the prevention of them acquiring a nuclear weapon is the real story. It seems logical to me that seizing control of the Strait of Hormuz from the city of London, thereby liberating the world from their control over energy and by extension, the world economy, was the primary objective. And of course, also to set Israel up for last in terms of public opinion, exposing that they essentially control not only our foreign policy, but also our domestic agenda, which we'll get into a little bit later in the show tonight, all for their benefit. So having laid that out, why don't you give us your take on the objectives of this operation? I'm sure this is something you've been asked on many shows since this began, but like I said, you and I haven't had a chance to really chop it up here. So what's your take on the objectives of the operation and what we've seen play out so far?
Absolutely. It's first thing everyone should realize, this is just simply a continuation of the operation from way back when. Just because we saw, and let's jump forward to Iran, because we can talk about what preceded it, and this is the next logical step. But let's just kick off let's take it as presented, which we know isn't the case, right? So all of a sudden everything's going hunky-dory. They're funding terrorists in the Middle East. And then all of a sudden, Trump starts the war. Okay. That was first of all, for those that haven't been paying attention, I can't remember who said it online recently, but he was speaking to somebody who said, I don't know about why you're suffering amnesia. They've been saying death to America for 47 years. So what do you mean Trump started the war, right? He's finally decided to shut it down. It's a great line. I wish I thought it was absolutely true. But that's what was presented, right? Trump started the war. Not true. This is a continuation of what should have happened ages ago. So you mentioned shutting down the flow of money and control of Middle East oil from the City of London, which is absolutely correct. And Promethean Action, those two brilliant young ladies who have been at this for decades, woke the world up to what was going on with the City of London and the British Empire. And they've done great work. So for anybody watching who hasn't got onto Promethean Action, please do so. You'll get a perspective that you won't get anywhere else. They don't have every angle, but then nobody has every angle. But what they have is quite unique. And just remember, if anybody tells you they know exactly what's going on, they're lying. Because even the Archangel Michael doesn't know God's plan. God knows God's plan. The rest of us are just doing our best to keep up. So
Amen.
The war starts.
Yep.
The war starts and everyone gets upset. There's going to be boots on the ground. There's going to be countless deaths. It's going to be horrible. It's Iraq 2.0. And that's exactly as it was intended. Well, what people should realize is that the operation was already not completed, but well prepared well before Iran even hit the news. It's the analogy like you don't attack a hill with 100,000 men until you throw the artillery on top of it to soften it up. So when they get up there, all they have to do is mop up the remnants.
Right.
So metaphorically, that's exactly what happened with Iran. And all the things that they were concerned about were taken care of. The nuclear program, that was taken out a long time ago. Operatives were deep inside the system, sabotaging it, revealing information. And so when bombs did have to hit, and they did, it was all good. It was already well underway. The fear of boots on the ground, never going to happen, because this is not the old style of regime change that we're accustomed to, where the military goes in, and the default setting for the military is to blow things up. We like breaking stuff. That's what we're really good at. We're not so good at building. And as I said sometime recently, Donald Trump and the White Hats, their default position is to build a better burger. And if you've got a burger joint on the corner of the street and it's got all the people there, but they're selling bad burgers, a soldier might go and take it out and leave a smoking ruin. Well, what does DJT do? He just builds a better burger and attracts people to his shop and starves the other one. So that's the approach. So they go into Iran. The image is one of a terrible war. It's going to lead to World War III. Oh my God, destabilization in the Middle East. Never going to happen. It was always taken care of. And so now, instead of regime change, it's leadership change. This is a little like denazifying Germany after World War II. And the Allied generals were told, get rid of all the Nazis. And they couldn't. Why? Because the country still has to run. You can't afford to have supply chain shocks. And so you've always got to keep the show running. So, hey, just change the orders. I mean, these countries, most people, even Western countries, they will just follow orders. That's why we're in this mess. Nobody actually thinks anymore. But what happens is they go in and they just start giving different orders, and the orders are coming down through the same people, except maybe the guy at the top, who is now a smear in a desert somewhere, and people will just follow orders. Now, this is a technique, just so you're aware, this is happening right now, even with the Masons. The Masons don't understand they're under white hat control. So you got white hat telling black hat what to do, and the black hats are telling their useful idiots like the Masons to do stuff, and they think they're still running the show, but they've been working for the good guys for the longest time. So the same thing's been happening in Iran. And so we've got terrible, frightening news coming out of Iran, and that's in order to demonstrate, as to explain to the people, to show to the people more appropriately what the black hats intended. But it was never going to happen. There is no World War III. But the people have to believe that because they need to be woken up. Because after all this time, great swathes of the population are fast asleep.
Oh, yeah.
And they haven't quite got the news. So Iran, just to tie that in a nice little bow, it had to be taken out, but it was well in advance by what we call preliminary operations. They actually took them out. And then this show is to show what happened now. Last point on this. If it's on the news, it's already taken care of. So if you see something on the news and it's shock horror, it's already fixed. They are 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead, and you're only getting the news now that this one's already taken care of and they're well in advance. And so that's Iran. But there are many parts to it. The money, that's flowing out, its effect on China and India, the two economies. If you cut the oil off, you're in big trouble. And for evidence of what I'm saying being correct, let me just give you this. In Australia, like everywhere else on the planet, the oil price spiked, and gas at the service station was outrageously expensive. And yet somehow it dropped to record lows again very, very quickly. Now, supply chain shocks don't resolve themselves that quickly. If the oil had really stopped flowing, we would have had months trying to get the crude to the refineries to the distribution to the service stations, but it didn't happen. Why? Because off the coast of Australia, when there was no oil flowing and there was terrible shortages around the world, we had oil tankers off the coast just sitting at anchor, waiting to deliver the crude that was ready to go. That way, the supply chain shock never occurred. And that's not unusual even in the Straits of Hormuz when I was in the Middle East, because that was right where I was. And if you stood on the shores of the Emirates looking north across to Iran and the Straits of Hormuz right there, it was like a massive car park of ships waiting. And so the supply chain shock never occurred. What does that mean? It means they knew it was going to happen. They knew how long it would take, and they needed the oil to flow quickly again. So that's the level of control and planning that is being executed now. And just to finish on this point, I said, if you're seeing it, it's already taken care of.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, you and I have discussed that principle many times, that indeed we were going to see kinetic activity, sort of like the way I framed the question, but the cover story behind it and the way that it's presented to the public, that aspect of it is a show. So it's in a lot of ways, it's a hybrid. There are indeed kinetic operations going on, but the way that it's being presented to the public is entirely curated by the white hats in order to continually wake people up. It's the same basic paradigm that we've been talking about now for years, and really hasn't changed all that much. So a couple of follow-ups on this, and then I want to pivot more specifically to Israel. One of the things that you and I discussed, I remember on one of our previous conversations, is, and this was right around the time when we were very much focused on the acquisition of Greenland and perhaps Canada, and we discussed that in this new multipolar balance of power, where you have the United States, China, and Russia all working collectively together through back channels to secure their own spheres of influence in their in their respective hemispheres. I'm curious to get your take on how this operation in Iran might contribute to the United States, China, and Russia controlling their respective hemispheres, how that plays into the overall plan of this multipolar structure that I do believe in, and you as have agreed that that's ultimately the way is the world is going to shape up once it's all said and done.
Yeah, it's key because we know that every country on the planet's been run by the cabal through London, Rome, Washington, running the three major cities, and this is the dismantling of that. Now, setting China free, setting Russia free from cabal control, because they were just like North Korea and all the dramas with which we've been dealing over decades now. These apparently intractable problems. The moment Trump got in office, all of a sudden they're gone, and even the haters had difficulty trying to figure out what he had done wrong. He's the president for 2.5 minutes, and he's in North Korea shaking the little rocket man's hand.
Yeah,
this is unprecedented. We were so prepared and we were so accustomed to this ongoing, as I said, insoluble problems, and all of a sudden they're being solved. That's because the cabal had been removed, as you know. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But now that control and the money flow, particularly, and there are other things in Iran as well, by the by. It's not just funding terrorism in the Middle East. It's not just there are things you can talk about, portals and lots of interesting things going on.
Oh yeah,
and that's an element that plays a role in this too, that goes unsaid. The influence of other forces other than the angelic beings that are helping us out, God's plan. But now China and Russia And this is enunciated very clearly in Trump's national security strategy, where, as you said, he wants countries to take care of themselves, and he genuinely does. He's not interested in being king of the world. That doesn't mean he's not going to carry a big stick and thump people if he needs to, because this global alliance is already there. It's been established. It's been operating. It's in place. And so now evil has been removed in terms of command and control of Russia, China, and every other country as well. Watch Africa change when they get a chance in their own time, in accordance with their own cultures. They get a chance to grow as well instead of being stepped on. And it's not by the white man, it's by the cabal. And so this will liberate all the nations on the planet to start the journey of becoming what they can become, becoming healthy, wealthy, representing people's individual needs. And different countries with different cultures are going to have a different time scale here. Some will get there quite quickly, some will be very slow. Because where you have a kingdom, the king does not want an empowered and informed population, because what kings tend to do is every step is maintaining power. That will change, but over time. And so no control of each individual country. Go do your work. It's too much trouble. It's too hard. You can't do it anyway. And let them do it. But keep a close eye on where countries are going, what their trajectory is. And there will be consequences for actions for countries that aren't good international citizens, let's say. You can no longer run a slave economy anymore. You can't have 6-year-olds digging up cobalt for your Tesla vehicles, for example. These things are real changes that have to take place sooner rather than later. And countries are fabulously wealthy. I mean, a number that popped out in the the healthcare fraud that's going on in the US at the moment. 450 people were recently arrested. $6.5 billion. That's just them and just healthcare. So how wealthy do you think the nations are? All the nations, fabulously wealthy, incredibly wealthy. There's some documents out of the Committee of 300 if you can find it. And the numbers, it's like a cartoon number. Something like 12 zeros, 15 zeros, 20 zeros that have been collected over the years, landed in the Philippines. That seems to be a bit of a hotspot for collecting rotten money. But the planet is so fabulously wealthy, nobody ever has to work again. I mean, you need work in order to grow as an individual, to become something worthwhile, but not for cash. You can do what you love. And so the amount of money out there is just phenomenal. The countries are free. So back to your point about China and Russia specifically, it applies to every country on the planet. And every people, even in every country, it's now incumbent upon them to begin to prepare for that freedom, that ability to start taking care of themselves. And this is why Australia One has been heavily future focused on a constitutional convention to decide by whom and how we wish to be governed. Now, we're not telling anybody how you should do it. We're just presenting a model that we think works for us, and they can choose. And we welcome other people to come up with their model and present it to the people for consideration. That's the way it's got to work, and everyone's got to do it. And I'm currently doing a 21-part series, and I'm being blocked mercilessly. Oh my goodness me, we can't get a message out there. The ones do get out. The communications, the static is so bad, it's ridiculous. But we're continuing. I'm looking at every element of national power. So I broke down the elements of national power. And when you ask that, what's national power? That's the ability of a nation state, nation being the people, state being the political apparatus, a nation state to marshal everything in its power to create a nation state that the people want. And so I broke down the elements of national power into 19 of them. And that level of granularity is absolutely critical, so that people realize, my God, this is more complex than I thought. And they realize this isn't you can't elect someone saying better roads, more jobs. No. You got to get down to the detail and figure it out. And then how do we manipulate those elements of national power into our end state for A1, a moral, sovereign, self-reliant Christian Western constitutional republic, which is economically powerful, militarily intimidating, politically free, culturally vibrant, and socially cohesive. So I've got these 19, forced through these 11 elements to an end state. What do you need to do that? And then the bit that's driving it all, what is our strategy? And our strategy, A1's view of this, is we want Australia. Twin pillars of our strategy. The first is identity first, and then a great power status. So identity first, great power status. They're the twin pillars that drive us forward. What does that mean? Identity first. We are a Christian, Western, Anglophone culture. That's it. We already are what we are. We like what we are. Everyone likes what we are because they want to come here, like the US and every other Christian, Western, Anglophone culture. So every action we take in this new country of ours, it's got to reinforce that, and that requires policies, and those policies require constitutional authority to do it, and that's what we're now driving through. So we're saying, okay, what do you want? We want this. They're the policies that we need for it, and they're the constitutional authorizations so we can create and maintain and strengthen this Christian, Western, Anglophone culture. The second part is a great power. Now, do we want to be, the shit kicker at the bottom of the pile? No. We're richer than Saudi Arabia. We should be huge in terms of just GDP, for example. I think where are we at the moment? Oh my God, I think we're 18th on the planet. It's pathetic. So we're setting goals. In the short term, we want to be 10th. So we're going to kick Canada out of its 10th position, and we'll take it. And we need, I think, an 18% increase in our GDP to do that. Now, that's a ridiculous number. Well, hang on to your hats, because I've got even more ridiculous numbers. Because in the medium to long term, we want to punch our GDP by 100%, double it. So we can take the number 5 slot and kick the UK out of its position, which won't be too hard because the UK is destroying itself anyway. So great power, which means we have the ability to affect the Indo-Pacific region. We want to become an Indo-Pacific hegemony, able to affect normative rules of the region, meaning we affect how other people do business. So they're two massively big goals. Now, can you understand the reason I've taken that time to describe that? All of a sudden, all these little problems back here seem really small. Does that make sense? Because now we've got people focused on this incredible future.
Yep.
And we're building it, and there's a job to be done. And so I'm taking them through this 21-part series, taking through every one of these elements of national power, saying this is what we need in terms of population. This is what we've got to do in terms of our natural resources. This is what we've got to do in terms of our political governance. This is what we've got to do, fill in the blank. And it's a slow process. It's data heavy, but it's a very long answer to your question about China and Russia. But if every country starts focusing on what they want, by whom and how they will be governed, all of a sudden, we stop watching the fear porn, and all of a sudden, we're actually optimistic. We feel like the Scots and the Bostonians having a great old time, where all of a sudden we're not seeing riots and cars being turned over and police being shot, and all of a sudden we've got an entire town invaded by Scotland. And when the Scots invade, it's a 50-50 proposition on who's going to come out on top, but everybody turned up in good spirits. And I've got to tell you, it brought a tear to my eye, because the advantage of being a silly old fart, 66 years of age, is I've seen a lot. And it reminded me of life when I was a boy. It was beautiful. It wasn't like this. And it really hit home how the cabal has normalized aberrant behavior by individuals, corporations.
That's right.
Interest groups, countries. They've normalized it to the point where we think there's no out. But I've seen it before. It's great. And so this journey into by whom and how we're going to be governed is critical for every individual on the planet to start that journey. It's going to take time. It'll take years. Got it. I'm still learning stuff as I'm teaching. It's an old saying. If you want to learn something, teach it. And the more I go through this process of examining the elements of national power, it opens my eyes wide as can be. But I can also see there's a path to the future. And that future, my God, it is brilliant. It is just superb. And we get the opportunity. As somebody once said, I think it was John Adams, he was referring to the ancient Romans, and he said, how fortunate are we to be at that place in history where we get to create our nation? And he said, even the ancients never had this privilege, and here we are. And that's why I get so excited about it, because it is just unique in not in our lifetimes. This is unique on the planet. An entire planet gets to decide for itself, as opposed to being conquered, a sword put to your throat, watching your families decimated. No,
which we have,
thanks to DJ. Yeah, exactly. So there you
just
go.
By different means, absolutely. And you and I have had many discussions, substantive, deep discussions in the past about how that's been carried out in a asymmetrical warfare sense. They've conquered us by gradually eroding and destroying our culture. And that really is what it comes down to. And that's what I love about A1 is that that's of course you have a wide ranging focus and certainly a very pragmatic plan to heal all of that damage and to actually I didn't realize that you were calling for a constitutional convention and that you had put together this series. So let me just ask you, for folks out there, is that series on your A1 channel on Rumble so folks can go check it out?
Yeah, it is. In fact, as I said, and we apologize for the quality of the recording because it's really dodgy at times because the bad guys are shutting us down. Now I'll do some interviews, and it's clear as day. And others that are too damaging to the black hats, they will shut down. So I apologize for the quality of it. Episode 4 was picked up by John Michael Chambers because he realized we were having difficulties doing it ourselves. So he actually helped us put out episode 4, but they're all on our Rumble channel, Australia One. The Rumble channel, you can watch it there. And again, apologies for the quality. We're going to improve it. But as you go through, as I said in the first episode, it's extremely data heavy, but just let it wash over you because the human mind can absorb hundreds of bits of information a second. It's only consciously aware of a few thousand bits per second that it's taking in. But it's taking it all in. So let it wash over, let it wash over. It's not like it's like a reference book. You can't just read it line by line and think you've got it. No. You've got to go over. So Rumble, Australia One, Rebirth of a Great Nation. I've already got episode 5 ready to load up and record.
Beautiful.
I'm well behind the schedule. I should be on episode, I think, 13 or 14 by now, but we've been hammered. And that's okay. That's, the enemy gets a say in a war. He's not going to let you just walk onto his position. We get hammered, we fight back, we just keep driving forward. So yeah, Rumble, Australia One, Rebirth of a Great Nation, and start deciding for yourselves what sort of nation you want. And this applies to any problem you got. And I mean this is change management. It's one of the things that we do in consulting a lot, change management. And change management's tough because you're going for a set of understood rules, and those rules no longer apply. So you've got don't necessarily have anything. Where do we go from here? I don't know. And there's a set process. But one of the elements is to, you very quickly celebrate your achievements. Realize the world has changed. Understand that if we can't go back, then we have to move forward. It's simple as that. And then you start deciding for yourself, well, what do I want the world to look like? Because if you turn up with a plan, then all of a sudden you've got something future focused. It's more optimistic, and you can start moving forward. Now that doesn't mean people aren't, particularly in organizations, when there's a merger or an acquisition or it gets shut down or that people are sacked. It's heartbreaking. It's one of those stress events that's not easy to get to and get through. But if you've got a clear picture of what life could be like, and personal example here for everybody out there, because you're about to go through hell. A lot of you are. My second marriage collapsed. I thought, okay, we'll be fine. We said we'd do it amicably. It didn't work. And all of a sudden, I couldn't see my son. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, it was like having my own soul ripped out. It was the worst pain I've ever felt. Now, what did I do? Because I knew the mechanics of it. This part of my brain was going, okay, this is just a change management situation. While I'm smoking 3 packets of cigarettes a day, staring at a blank wall, trying to figure out what just happened in my life. What I did was I stuck on the wall pictures of what I want my future to be. And it was ridiculous. I mean it. I was in the depth of depression. I could barely get up. Fortunately, I had a contract that every month I went off and did a job. So they kept the money coming in. So for one day a month, I put on my happy face. I did my job, got paid a packet. And for the other 29 days, I was staring at all, smoking myself to death. But what I stuck on the wall, and this isn't new, but this is just pretty standard stuff. I stuck pictures or photographs of what I thought I wanted. And first up was a happy family, wife and kids. Okay, that's the first thing I wanted. What else? Just simple things, a house. And then I started getting a bit more exotic. I went, I want $400 million in the bank. Insane, right? And I put another picture and I said, I'm consulting internationally. right? So there's a picture of me sitting in front of Il Duomo in Milan. There you go. Well, I want to internationally consult. I want this. And I just stuck it on the wall and left it there. And that's where I worked. And it was facing me. The one thing I did was, that's all great. And I said, look, I'm here because the decisions I've made, for better or for worse. Either I made bad decisions or I allowed people to treat me badly or whatever. But I'm here as a result of my decisions. So I took full responsibility. And I actually looked at the picture of the happy family and I said, you know what? It's not God's fault. He didn't cock up. I did. I had every reason to do well. I had every reason to do well. And if I never have a family like I want, which is the most important thing to me, it's on me. And that set me free to realize, okay, it's on me. I got myself here. I'm not going to play the blame game. And I just got on with it. Well, and here's it's wild. The journey from that point, from the depths of depression, and it was hard. Don't get me wrong. You know, 7 weeks later, I wasn't happy. I was still in bad shape. In fact, I was bad shape years later, still trying to get through this. But within 7 weeks, I was in Milan in front of Il Duomo at 11 o'clock at night, drinking a grappa and an espresso, going, I can't fucking believe this. Out of the blue, like a consulting job. And when you're a consultant, you dream of these jobs. You get the phone call, okay, can you be in, you speak Italian, don't you? Yeah. Can you be in Italy to do some consulting in Milan in the gas and oil industry? And I went, oh, yeah, baby. I didn't have another job. It's just, you know, we take human-sized steps, God-sized steps, as Jim Rohn said. And all of a sudden, all these pictures, they started materializing. And I mean it. I still haven't got the $400 million. In fact, I checked my bank balance the other day. It was 52 cents. And the lady behind the counter was sort of embarrassed for me. And I went, relax. I've been below zero. This is fine. This is fine. I can get past this moment in history. Because the first time you hit zero, it hurts. It's terrifying. And after a while, you go, I can live with zero. I've done it before. I'll do it again. I don't know how, but I'll manage. But anyway, the point of the story is this. We're about to go, the people of planet Earth are going to go through some really rough time. And I'm not laughing and minimizing the pain. Children have died. Divorces will happen. Parents will be, or, people will be maimed for life. So it seems at this stage. That's going to change. But the point of the fact is this: we can get through it. We can all get through it. Doesn't matter what the pain is. And I've been there, and the pain's real. It's real. But start setting up what you want the future to look like, and just watch it turn up. But take responsibility for the part you played. That way you're not wasting energy blaming, but he done it or she done it. And there's plenty of that to go around. And yeah, maybe they are to blame. But, I married her. That was on me. So,
well, I think I understand. I mean, metaphorically speaking, I mean, this is sort of what we're facing collectively as humanity is ultimately coming to terms with having to rebuild on the ashes of what is the old world that's very rapidly being exposed. It's already materialized, as we've talked about already behind the scenes, and it's continually being continually being unveiled by the white hats. But the process of going through that crisis is certainly not easy. And you and I have we've discussed on many occasions the dark night of the soul moment that is going to ultimately propel humanity forward, and that we have to feel the pain in order to collectively understand our responsibility and to be able, you've talked about this many times just in terms of Australia from your perspective, to be able to fill the void that is going to be left there by these cleanup operations that are ongoing. We, the people in every country around the world, have to be in a position where we're understanding the responsibility that we have moving forward to take leadership positions. And that's what's so inspiring about what you've done over at A1. And, so it's brilliant though, because we can talk about that, like you talked about your own personal story, but it really is a microcosm of what humanity is facing right now. Right.
Absolutely. And the key thing that we have to rediscover about ourselves, and this is the bigger than people realize, we have to rediscover our own humanity. You use the word. We need to rediscover our own humanity, because we have been so demoralized, so brainwashed, so poisoned, so
Mhm.
MK ultra'd, so everything,
Mhm.
that to ask a question, what is a human, is actually a fair question, because nobody knows anymore. And I can give you some hope here, because do you think it's really, we are the cancer that people are telling us that we are? Do we really believe that all we need is games and drugs and alcohol, in accordance with the World Economic Forum's future for humanity? What is it to be human? And I can tell you, in the survival of a species, it forms the character types, the personality types, the people you meet. It forms a bell curve like everything else. You got the extremes, and you got the big mass in the center.
Mhm.
Now, if we were the broken, distorted, evil, lazy, lying, whatever we're supposed to be, that they tell us we are, we wouldn't have survived 10 minutes as a species. We would have evaporated. And yet, despite the horrific treatment of the planet, here we still are, praying, hoping, working forward towards something. Now, not everybody, I get it, because some people are just, they're broken, and some are brainwashed, and some have literally been poisoned to death. But as a whole, humanity is moving forward. This speaks volumes of what it is to be human.
The resilience
We
of
are
humanity. Absolutely. Yeah.
oh, exactly. We are remarkable. We can still connect to the Almighty. It doesn't matter, and it's open to everybody. What's that line by Andrew Clavin? Call now. His lines are open. No waiting. Pray like there's a God. You don't believe there's a God, or pray that there is. Pretend there is one and pray to Him. The lines are open. You will be. You have this direct access to the Creator. It doesn't matter how miserable your life is. There are countless stories, and I find these inspiring. Countless stories of people in the worst possible position, completely insoluble problems, never going to, it's just bad. There's only one way out. Well, there isn't. There's more than one way out. Step one, always pray, and you'll get yourself out. And here's the last one. I'm sorry, I'm really being a little bit verbose today, but
It's okay.
there
We
isn't
love
a
it.
problem anybody on the planet is facing now that hasn't been faced before. There just
Mhm.
hasn't. Everything that you are facing, everything that I'm facing, and don't get me wrong, I spit the dummy, and I throw my little tantrums. But when the emotion cools, and I look at myself and go, settle down. You're not facing anything that hasn't been faced before and overcome successfully. So stop whinging, get on with it. So
Yep.
the humanity, the human race, we rediscover our humanity, and we're all going to find what a beautiful place this planet's going to be.
I love it. I love it. Absolutely. The resilience of humanity, and specifically what you said about our connection to God. That's exactly why that's been the cabal's number one priority, is to try to separate us, or to try to block us from that connection, because they know that that's ultimately where our resilience and our strength comes from. And of course, an extension of our relationship with God is our relationship with each other. And like I was saying a little while ago, that's what they have systematically done by replacement migration and all of the horrific end results of that have ultimately destroyed our sense of national pride, our sense of national identity, our sense of culture, our connection to one another. We talked about this a lot back in the COVID era, when they were trying to keep us 6 feet apart. And there was a lot of discussion about that, because they just know inherently that when human beings have a connection to the Almighty, and they and that connection extends out between us, which has always been God's design, that we multiply and reproduce and grow these communities and cultures and countries, that there's nothing that can really keep us suppressed. And that's why they've had to work so hard to try to separate us from God, to try to keep us separated from one another, and to basically poison the wells of our national identity. And that's all a part of what we're piecing back together as a part of this great awakening. And it's I mean, certainly, like we kind of talked, we started out talking about the kinetic aspects that still have to play out in order for us to get
Mm.
to a place where this can actually take shape, and perhaps even before we can get squarely into the justice phase, which we'll touch upon a little bit later in the show. But, just in terms of kind of shifting back a little bit here, in terms of the kinetic action that we probably are going to continue to see, where else do you anticipate that we're going to see military action to fully achieve that multipolar balance of power that we talked about to set the stage for world peace, reconciliation, etc. I know Trump has talked a lot about Cuba lately, and certainly within the Western Hemisphere, there are a lot of people who are anticipating Mexico. We've already taken care of Venezuela. Where else do you? What else do you have on your radar as far as that goes? Where else might some hot spots be?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and here's a fun game for the audience at home to play. Look at the map of the world and just put a pin in every major hotspot that you can remember that they've been crying about for years. Oh my God, it's terrible here, it's terrible. And bit by bit, but one by one, what's going to happen is that'll all be dealt with. Whether it's South Africa, here's one out of the blue. South Africa, the white South Africans and ANC and the nonsense that's going on down there, the horrific treatment. And keep an eye on Africa, but not quite yet, because let's stick with the US. What's first? The US is going to see most of the action because that's the center of gravity. The US is first, and that's got to be sorted out. But then you watch, you're going to take out the obvious places like Mexico's got to be cleaned up, and it will be, and it has been, but it'll continue cleaning up slowly, apparently under their own leadership, but not really. Let's say it's directed democracy for a short period of time. Head into South America. A lot of problems down there, massive problems down there, because again, it's all cabal controlled. But bit by bit, some will resist worse than others. Some will go ahead with it, and it'll be fine. Trump's focus is certainly in the context of the globe, without a doubt. But his focus is the Western Hemisphere. That's why the Greenland, Canada, Venezuela, the northern countries in South America. That's why that's critical. He wants to get the Western Hemisphere sorted. He wants everybody out of the Western Hemisphere. And then from there, he knows he's got Australia. Now, we have a lovely, unique little place here, but we're not going to see a lot of drama in terms of violence because small population, highly concentrated, it's a lot easier to do. It has to be cleaned out without a doubt because we wall-to-wall Masons. You can't swing a dead cat in Oz without hitting half a dozen Masons. But Australia is geostrategically critical. South Africa, very critical. So you can put a pin in those two spots. You'll see stuff. It'll be very different. We're not going to see massive violence in Oz because it's just not like that here. There'll be localized events. You'll see people in suits, roughed up, walking down the steps, manacled, being arrested, that sort of thing. The Middle East is the Middle East is too useful for DJT at the moment. That's not going to be resolved yet. That's why I think Israel is last, because that's the head of the snake's got to come off last. But you can look at anywhere on the map and pick a country where the bigger problems will be solved first, but it's going to work its way entirely around the globe. Every country to some degree will be dealt with. It'll take years to slowly progress it. So it's a matter of just picking, what do you think of what are the main causes of drama? But it's not going to be regime change, as I said. It'll be leadership change, and you'll have a leader appointed, and this leader will seem to be achieving wonderful things that nobody could achieve beforehand, because it's not just, Trump wants good people to run their countries. He's not interested in becoming king of the world, although he very well might be at the moment, the single most powerful man that's ever lived. But he wants the Australians to run Australia. He wants the Lithuanians to run Lithuania. He wants the Irish to run Ireland. That's where the national strength, when it coheres together, that's where the planet then gets strong. It's hard to control 197 separate countries as opposed to the duopoly that the cabal love to have. There's only two sides, you're on one or the other, and you're all at war with each other all the time. And so every country on the planet's going to go through it, and you can just pick one you like. And it's going to be a Venezuela. They'll be doing a Venezuela on all the countries. So it's leadership change, not regime change. And each country will be responsible for saving themselves, with assistance, obviously. But that's the way I see it. So that's why the message to the planet is get going. Get started. Stick a picture on the wall of what you want your country to look like, and start working towards it.
Yeah, manifestation. Absolutely. I love that. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit more specifically about Israel. And then I didn't have this question on my list, but since you brought it up, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts about, because you had just said that that Trump and the White Hats, they want every country to run itself, and certainly they want to reverse the erosion of culture that we've talked about. And a key element of that, particularly in places like the UK, is how do they handle all of this replacement migration? How do they get rid of all these invaders? As you know, the rape gang report by Rupert Lowe recently came out. I mean, it was absolutely shocking. It turned my stomach to read some of this stuff. 250,000 white girls in
Yep.
the UK raped primarily by Pakistanis. So that's a question, but to use your term, let's put a pin in that for just a moment, and I'll come back to it. I did want to ask you about Israel for last, because you had mentioned that, uh, and what we're seeing right now are increasingly bad optics with regard to Israel. This is a process that began all the way back. If you only want to go back a few years, just go back to 10/7 and everything that happened in the aftermath of 10/7. Basically 70,000 Gazans, if not more, murdered, attempted genocide, et cetera, et cetera. Regardless of whether or not people believe it's real, optics or otherwise, this is the information that we're going to deal with here. And it becomes something of a demarcation line, particularly within the MAGA base, is the whole question of Israel first or America first. And as you know, this war in Iran has been extremely unpopular. It's been very divisive in the United States, but at the same time, it's put a massive spotlight on perhaps the most important aspect of disclosure, which is essentially that, as I mentioned before, the political apparatus has been hijacked by a foreign nation in order to do its bidding. And of course, this ties in directly with the Epstein blackmail operation. This is a tapestry of evil, as I often call it. Now, in the process of negotiating a peace deal, it was very telling that Israel was not invited into the discussion. And of course, their continued aggression in Lebanon has thrown the proverbial monkey wrench into Trump's efforts to end the war. Again, this is all part of the script. We know that, but uh, regardless, it's led to certainly J.D. Vance taking a very candid approach and telling the Israeli government that they better be mindful of the reality of their situation. He actually said in a press conference, and this is a direct quote, he said, one, Donald Trump is the only head of state in the entire world who is sympathetic to the nation of Israel at this moment in time. And he happens to be the head of state of the world superpower, which of course you just alluded to there. If I were in the cabinet of the Israeli government, I might not be attacking the only powerful ally I have left anywhere in the world. Second, some of those cabinet members who have been attacking the United States over the last 3 months, 2/3 of the defensive weapons that have protected your homeland have been built by American hands and paid for by American tax dollars. And of course, this is also part of the exposure. He's seeding the narrative. This is not the problem. And then the quote ends by him saying the problem for Israel is not Donald J. Trump and anyone in Israel who thinks their biggest problem is the president of the United States needs to wake up. He also said, very interestingly, that Israel is better at, quote unquote, intelligence collection than any other country in the world, which I found very interesting. And by the way, he said, including the United States, Israel is head and shoulders above everyone in terms of intelligence collection, translation, blackmail, Epstein connection, etc. And indeed, he indicated he doesn't trust the Israelis because they're a nation with different interests, different geopolitical objectives. Meanwhile, it's also been widely reported that Trump has established back channels with opposition leaders like Naftali Bennett and others ahead of their upcoming elections in October of this year. So my question is, do you believe that we're getting close to an inflection point, perhaps that's going to represent this decoupling of the United States and Israel, perhaps involving some sort of a false flag carried out by Israeli intelligence, Mossad, that would be the catalyst to fully expose Netanyahu's criminal regime? What direction do you see this going as far as Israel being saved for last?
Yeah, it's it's being massaged very, very adroitly, the whole Israel thing, because we know that even using the term Israel is highly inflammatory, because they love the fact that there's a conflation of different concepts when you mention Israel. Israel is either a false nation state that was created at the behest of the Rothschilds, and for whom do the Rothschilds work, for example?
Mhm.
Is Israel the Zionist movement? Is Israel Jaime that runs the local kosher deli? Is Israel the 6 million Jews that were allegedly killed when there weren't even that many in Germany before, during, or after the war? And so they intentionally use that, Israel for last. So what are we talking about here? Are we talking about an organization where to succeed on the planet, you have to pledge allegiance? Now, why do you have, I think it's something like 92% of your Congress are dual Israeli citizens? You know, are they Jews, and do they believe in the Torah? And no, no, that's how they get them. You sign up and you're going to have a career. We'll get you elected. You can spend the next 4,000 years as a member of Congress and retire with gazillions in the bank. That's what that
And
means.
it's
None of
fairly
them
common,
actually
right?
believe.
Yeah, it's fairly common. They show up in Congress with next to nothing, and the next thing you know, they're worth like $50 million. How does that happen?
Yeah, exactly. And
Mhm.
so when they say Israel, it's intentionally confusing, and that's by design. And the White Hats are using that as well to actually stoke the flames. Because to criticize Israel makes you anti-Semitic. Well, that's just ridiculous. It's just silly.
Yep.
Um, but that's what they're doing. So they're happy to have this confusion. Israel for us. Which Israel are we talking about? Are we talking about Jaime and his kosher deli? No, of course not. Nobody gives a rat's ass about that. It's the structure by which the planets be controlled. That's why it's last. So everything, all roads lead to the Khazarian mafia and their bosses, Committee of 300, and away you go. The cover story currently is Israel. Before that, it was something else. And
Mhm.
so what's going to happen? The preliminary operations will be this slow dismantling of this concept of Israel. All of a sudden, people start to think, well, hang on, I'm not talking about this, I'm talking about that. And you can see it on social media now. It's almost acceptable to be absolutely anti-Jewish and put cartoons up with people with big noses and raping kids and money in the bank and all that sort of stuff, which would have had you shot, a few short years ago. Now, is that attractive? No, it's got nothing to do with attractive, but it's just free speech, and away you go. And so they're dismantling this concept of Israel. So the people will start to realize, well, okay, it's not Jaime. I get it. He's just a Jaime. He does his thing. He goes to temple, he prays, he does whatever he does. Good luck to you. Well done. Just as long as your behavior is in line with the secular law, we're okay with that. That's certainly our policy.
Right.
And so we're going to start dismantling this idea of what is Israel and why is it last? Because it's the mechanism by which the planet's been run since Babylonian times and before. That's all it is. It's the mechanism. Now, getting to the specifics, so as you said, the Israeli cabinet, Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, he's not even Benjamin Netanyahu. You can see that. But again, that's part of the play where he gets to be the bad guy. He does really dumb stuff that even the most ardent Israel, inverted commas, supporters will have difficulty justifying. So it starts to isolate the supporter groups. That's why they keep pushing these narratives. That's why they keep pushing these events. 70,000, however many Palestinians were killed, 7,000 Palestinians killed, allegedly. They're making it really hard to support the structure. So they are disempowering Israel, inverted commas, to the point where the planet is happy to say, yeah, you know what, I've had a gutful too. I've really had a gutful. Because the Palestinians aren't saints, we know that. It's all a game. Innocent people being killed on both sides by evil people. And so is there going to be a false flag to bring it down? Potentially, but it's got to be preceded by this undermining and deconstructing the support systems around Israel to leave them like a shag on a rock, as we say, completely abandoned, and nobody cares anymore whether they live or die. That's got to be the objective. And then when it goes down, nobody cares. So it's critical to remove the support base, and that's the way it's going to happen. Does it need a massive false flag to bring them down? There'll be a number of events, I think, that'll slowly reveal to the people what bastards they have been in the United States for the longest time. Attacking your aircraft, attacking your ships, that never got investigated. All these events, which are common currency to us in the, I guess, in the movement, the freedom movement. But most people are horrified when you tell them that. And I was being told years ago, oh, it's this, that, and the other. And I said, slow down. It's not your average Jew. Now, they might be benefiting from the superior, the supremacist attitude of their leadership, but they're not guilty of anything any more than we are for not looking after the children that got raped and pinched. So it's the mechanism, it's the architecture, it's the leadership that needs to be broken. And once that's broken, what happens to Israel? I don't much care. We're lucky in Oz. I actually said months ago, fuck Israel, fuck Palestine, not in our area of strategic interest. We're interested in the Indo-Pacific. We have our own problems, so we have no opinion because we don't care. And which was great because I got to skewer all the critics by, well, what's your view? I don't have one. I don't care. Do I care what's going on in Upper Volta? No. Why should I care about Israel? Oh, well, the Bible says. The Bible doesn't say jack. It doesn't say anything. And even the chosen people, Mauro Biglino, who is an interlinear translator of the Bible. What does that mean? Mauro Biglino is an Italian, and he translates literally every word in the Bible, word by word, knowing the etymology, the context. And he put out a book called The Naked Bible, which is worth reading. And basically, who are the Jews? Well, the Jews, again, it's like starting with Iran. It's preceded by a whole bunch of things, but let's just say the Jews, who were they? Well, you know what? The Bible says the Elohim, the powerful ones from the sky, genetically manipulated the human race, the proto-humans, they produced a whole bunch of different people. And you know what? Yahweh was just this low-grade ET, wasn't all that powerful, but he was a real nasty bastard, and he managed to persuade a particular bunch of tribes to do some nasty things to other people. And this is why the Old Testament is full of bloodthirsty, blood-curdling orders from the allegedly God of love to kill women and children and to take your land. It's all nonsense. And the actual literal translation by Mauro Biglino says that, and he got sacked. The Vatican wasn't very happy that he actually did this. But this is all part of the dismantling of this concept of Israel, the chosen ones, blah, blah. Oh, please, God chose all of us. Stop it, really. Right. And so as the support and the concept of Israel is dismantled, then eventually when they go, it won't be this shock horror, oh my God, the world is coming to an end. No, it'll what do they say? It doesn't go with a bang, but with a whimper. Not even a whimper, probably just a fart, and nobody's going to care. It'll be like, who cares about, pick any ancient civilization. Are you still crying over the collapse of the Phoenician Empire? Who?
Well, it's interesting too that because in your part of the world, in Australia, like you said, you don't really pay much mind to Israel. The reason it's such an issue here for us as Americans, obviously, is because our government has been, and of course the optics are presenting to us now, is occupied by a foreign nation that ultimately gets us to do their bidding, controls our political agenda, our geopolitical, our foreign policy, our domestic, and that's why it's being put so forcefully in front of the people to try to wake them up, and it has been quite effective. The last time I checked, we now have a majority of people in America who are not supportive of Israel, and so it seems very obvious that what the White Hats are doing with this aspect of the operation, scripting it out this way, going back to 10/7, like I mentioned, which of course was a story that was totally ridiculous on its face, that the most heavily fortified border in the world where they can detect a grain of rice, somehow Hamas managed to use hand gliders and go-karts on carts and all types of stuff. I mean, it was just so ridiculous. It looked like a low, a cheap quality movie. But the story, the setup, and then of course the aftermath, it's all been systematically damaging Israel's place of esteem, shall we say, in the minds of Americans. And of course, a massive portion of the American voting bloc and population, for that matter, are Christian Zionists. And that's also part of the problem and you were speaking to that, is reverse engineering that psychology, because it's a very, when it comes to religion, when it comes to the Bible, when it comes to people's deeply held beliefs that they think are their foundational understanding of the world, trying to change that is a very delicate process. It takes quite a bit of time in order to get people to even show up to that conversation, even to be willing to have that discussion. But
Yep.
interestingly enough, younger generation has made, I mean, enormous leaps and bounds over the older generation in terms of challenging the beliefs that they were indoctrinated with. So go ahead.
Oh, it was exactly, and it's magnificent, and that's why this process is going to be require generational change. There are some truths that won't come out for
Yeah.
100 years, and the
Yeah.
example I've used before, you couldn't say that JFK was shot by a conspiracy of bad people at the time, because there was too much of a personal, emotional commitment to that individual. That can come
Right.
out now because all the people that wept on that day, and I was alive when it happened. Not that I cared much, but it's a distant event, so the truth can come out, and the emotion won't be there. Similarly
Right.
with this, and this is where our adversaries have been clever. They always work on multi-generational plans.
Right.
We've been taught to have a attention span of a goldfish, where we just jump from one shiny object to another, whether it's wrestling or the NFL or whatever it is.
Right.
But they work on generational change, and so over many generations they can achieve whatever they need to. And this is going to happen here too. As you say, the younger generations, they're going to glide through this stuff and look at us and go, "Were you really that stupid?" And the answer is going to have to be, "Yeah, we were. Sorry, we did our best, but we had our heads up our backsides. We believe this nonsense." But then, as my generation and old generations die off, the truth can start to come out, and the younger generations can come through wide-eyed, looking for the truth, very, very distrustful, which is not a bad thing to have. You've got to be distrustful, and it's a case of you first. Prove it to me. This works, really? Well, you go. Show me. And that's a good thing, because then now we're talking about the role of the individual in what has become a collectivized society. And it's going to be uncomfortable for many people because they don't want the responsibility. Bad news, folks, you're going to have to take it. You really
That's
are.
right.
But
Right.
it's good that, it'll be taken care of.
Indeed. All right. Well, let's circle back really quick to the previous question that I dropped, and then I said we'll put a pin in that. The issue of, well, first of all, I'd love to just hear your take on this rape gang report. I might be butchering the title. It was like I think it was the rape gang inquiry or something along those lines that was released
Yeah.
by Rupert Lowe, who seems to be positioned very well to eventually take the reins of power in the United Kingdom. And of course, we had Keir Starmer stepping down just over the past couple of days. Very interestingly, on the heels of this information coming out, I mentioned before 250,000 white girls systematically gang raped and trafficked and absolutely demoralized and dehumanized by primarily Pakistani men, invaders of in the form of this replacement migration, but ultimately invaders of a different form. They didn't storm across the border with their weapons. They were invited into the country by the cabal. And so here we are. But the real big, so I want to hear your reaction to that. But the bigger question is, how do you remedy this problem? How do you get rid of all of these people? What needs to happen? People have said things before about I don't really know the extent to which you believe in Nasara, Jasara, this idea that people are just going to want to go back to their home country so that they can participate in this brand new world financial system. Maybe, I don't know, but on a more pragmatic level, if that let's just say that's not true, how do you actually deal with this problem? Because, like we've said, and this has been a consistent theme in our discussion tonight, is the erosion and destruction of culture, and you can see it over there. Probably, it's the most glaring example you can point to across the world. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, let me just start with this thought. In going through the 19 elements of national power, the most important all is population. And by population, we talk about the numbers, the characters, the belief systems, the culture, all the things that we imagine. Because the success of any nation is literally predicated on the people. You can have all the IT, you can have all the whatever. It's the people. And anybody that started a business knows that. You can have a first-class business idea and a second-class team. You won't make $1. You can have a second-class business idea and a first-class team. You've got a chance of making it big. That's how important people are. That's why the cabal has done this migration replacement issue, because they knew they had to destroy us by bringing in trash. And if that's offensive, I don't much care, because that's what they are. They're uneducated, they're culturally incompatible. Some of them are just barbarians, and away you go. So having said that, that's why that's important. Now, 2 points to this report. The first one I'll deal with, and then I'll deal with how you solve it, because this is quite unique. Apart from revealing the barbarity of Islam, which people will finally get, it's actually revealing the support structure that allowed it to happen, specifically the UK police, specifically the Freemasons, who control Britain. Britain is the home of the Freemasons. And watching police arrest dads who are trying to rescue their 11-year-old daughters who are being drugged and plied with alcohol, being raped by a dozen Pakistanis, and then the police come in and arrest the father. My God, man, that strikes something deep in my heart, I can tell you. But what's going to happen is now the entire structure of the UK, which is highly rigid, the monarchy, the Freemasons, you cannot breathe in the UK because of hierarchy. I remember I had a colleague of mine, he was a Brit, and he came to Australia and he was consulting here, and he said he loved Australia. And I said, why was that? He said, because here Jack's as good as his master. The Australians don't tolerate those who have got tickets on themselves, as we say. We're not big on arrogance. We expect our leaders to be self-deprecating and modest, no matter how good we are. We don't like people saying I'm the best. And different countries are different, that's fine. And he'd love that about Australia. But in UK, it is stultifyingly rigid. And so that has to be smashed from the royal family through to the Freemasons, entirely shattered. And that's this report. And it's been going on for ages, but this report is out now in order to shatter all of that. Every one of those coppers should be hung by the neck till dead that facilitated this, because that many children, this isn't a crime. Are you kidding me? This is beyond crime. This is war.
That's right.
Against innocent girls. And so what do? The barbarity, the sheer gruesomeness of what has been going on is setting the scene for the solution. Now, what's the solution? Are people going to willingly go home to get their $10.50 that's in their bank account, according to Nasara Gassara? Maybe, but I wouldn't bank on that.
Yeah, right.
Well, you can't just move them out because they're born there. They're Brits. Yeah, you can. See, we've been convinced by this globalist organization called the United Nations. You can't strip somebody of their nationality, or you can't leave them stateless. That's just cruel. Fuck them. You strip them of their nationality. You put them on ships and planes. You fly them to the shithole from where their culture came from. Not them. I don't care if they were born in London. That doesn't make them a Brit. That makes them an interloper. You fly them back to Pakistan. Now, you don't think the Pakistan government's under control? Oh, you bet it is. Why do you think this has all taken place? All the preliminary work that needed to be done to affect the solution was done ages ago. Every government on this planet, every government is under control. And so when, let's say, I'm not saying this is the way they do it, all these people are now stripped of their citizenship. They are stateless, and they're going to be flown back to Pakistan and dumped there, and that's Pakistan's problem to solve. That's how you do it. Now, is that popular? No. Is it nice? No. Is it necessary? Damn right it is. And you watch London turn around.
It's very popular in the UK at this point. The people are. I mean, yeah. I honestly don't understand how that the entire country isn't burning right now.
Yeah, blows me away. Maybe the good guys are toning down the emotions in order to keep it under control because they're turning the 5G up to something else, or maybe they're spraying us with stay calm chemicals. I'm not sure, but I'm fascinated that not one person has squeezed the trigger and blown somebody's head off.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I know so that's how they gave up their weapons and all that, but you know that there are always ways and means for people to violently resist. And I'm not advocating that. I'm not a Brit. But I can tell you one thing. I mean, a report comes out that 250,000 white girls were raped, and the police were ultimately facilitating the entire thing by these foreign invaders that were let in by the politicians. I mean, if that's not a cause for people to get out in the streets and get violent, I don't know what is.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point. And this is, in a roundabout way, this is exactly what we're doing with this rebirth of a great nation and the analysis of the 19 elements of national power. What policies do you want? Okay, we want to be able to strip someone of their acquired nationality, or of their nationality. Forget it. We say you are persona non grata. There's a nice Western concept in Latin, persona non grata. But I was born here. Don't give a shit. We're going to strip you of your nationality, and we're going to throw you back to the culture from which you hail. Now, do most constitutions have laws that say you can do that? No. But here's the beauty of what I'm doing with this whole process. Here's the elements of national power. Here's our end state. Here's the pillars of our strategy. Now, we want to, these policies, having done all of that, to create this world we want, we're going to have these policies. And now we need the constitutional authority to do it. And if the Constitution says the government, given proper grounds, is able to strip an individual of their nationality and remove them from that land, why is that wrong? Well, it's not wrong, but we believe it is because the United Nations, that globalist collection of third world thugs and overpriced bureaucrats, have been telling us for years that it's wrong. It's not wrong. If someone's in your home as an invited guest and they start tearing the place up, you pick him up by the scruff of the neck and you throw him out the door and you lock the door. Why is a nation different? It's not. This is our home. And they have no rights here unless we give them rights. And again, this whole process that we're going through, the constitutional authority to, for example, say, yeah, you can apply for citizenship after 20 years if you have been a net benefit by paying tax, if there is tax, for example, and certainly by not committing any crimes. You commit a crime, you're gone. And after 20 years of keeping your nose clean, you might be able to apply for citizenship, as opposed to what they're currently doing now, fast tracking it with hundreds of thousands of Indians from the subcontinent, where I can't even keep up with the numbers that they're throwing into Australia to turn us in almost. And I have no problem saying, well, all bets are off. Don't care if you're born here. No anchor babies. Away you go. Back to your shithole. Fix up your country, because we were good. We were quite happy here without you. You're a net deficit to this country. Again, it's our home. If someone came to your home, even if you invited them in for dinner, and they start telling you, well, you can't eat that because I don't like it, and you can't dress like that because I don't like it, and I don't like your language, so you have to speak my language, and you can't criticize me, but I can criticize you. Yeah, after 5 minutes at the dinner table, out they go. Same thing.
Not to mention the fact that they're being subsidized by taxpayers to come and invade the country and erode the culture, destroy basically everything that they come across. They're active. I mean, that's what's so insane about all this, and it's no different here in America. Is the politicians open up the door, they lower the drawbridge, they let everybody in, and then we end up having to pay to subsidize these people to destroy our country. So you cut the money off, and then of course, if you have, somebody mentioned in the chat as well, you have the mainstream media, and that's something I wanted to talk about if we get to it a little bit later in the show. That we seem to agree within the truth community primarily that the white hats are in control of the mainstream media, and that happens to be their primary programming tool that is causing all of this, like what you had referenced, the brainwashing of the people, the UN agenda. That's ultimately the media's primary role, is to brainwash the people into accepting all of this. So there are multiple different ways I think you can address the problem, but you're absolutely right. I think at the end of the day, what it's going to come down to is you need to have the political will and the population behind you, and of course the military as well, to say enough is enough. These people all have to go.
Absolutely. I see no problem with it, but that's just me. It's a clear solution to a clear and present danger to the well-being of the nation. And just because it hasn't been done before, and it has, we can do it again. And anybody that doesn't like the idea, I should fund a few people to a month free trip to Pakistan and see how they like it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep. All right. Well, let's switch gears here a little bit, and let's talk about some of what's playing out here domestically in the US. And I actually wanted to begin with getting your thoughts on these data centers that have been popping up seemingly everywhere in recent months. This is an issue that's been uh, pretty much captivating the country. And I don't know really to what extent that's going on in Oz. You can speak on that. But yesterday, we happened to see. I'm sure you are very well aware, and everyone in the audience as well. We saw the White House X account post a mock Q drop, saying that America will be the leader in quantum technologies. I think it said something along those lines, and it was it had a 47 there, which just so happened to connect. I saw SG Anon made this connection with an exact delta from 2022. I don't remember the drop itself, but that also had a 47 in it. Nevertheless, it was very interesting calm to say the least, but it also ties directly into the question about the purpose of these data centers, which are enormously unpopular. The polls indicate that around 70% of Americans oppose the construction of these data centers in their locality. And there actually have been several instances where people have mobilized at the local level successfully to stop these projects from moving forward. But at the same time, however, they also seem to be a very high priority for the Trump administration, and of course, by extension, the White Hats. There have been several viral social media stories about, and this is where it gets a little bit confusing. I want to get your take on this, about people being forced off of their property under eminent domain laws, and uh, essentially to clear the land so that they can move forward with these data center construction sites. And you recall that there was actually a provision in the One Big Beautiful Bill that was eventually eliminated due to a great deal of opposition. But in its original form, it prohibited states, it put a 10-year moratorium on states being able to pass laws to regulate AI. So there's a lot of concerns, and I happen to think that they're warranted. People see what appears to be the infrastructure for a technocratic surveillance grid being constructed. And of course, it's not just here in the United States. We have the most, but it's all over the world. Hence the wide-ranging opposition that I referenced a moment ago. But others are suggesting that AI, quantum computing, which of course the White House was just posting about, they said we're going to be doing Q posting, and by Q we mean quantum. But this AI quantum computing is going to liberate humanity. And like any tool, I suppose, it all depends on who's wielding it. So what is your take on these data centers and how it fits into the big picture?
Yeah, let's knock a few things on the head first. Are they data centers, or are they cover stories for underground cities where they need lots of drinking water for people to live, because that's where the elites are living? And where the data centers are, they say we need drinking water to keep it cool. No, you don't. You just need water, maybe. So there are elements to this that I'm not going to go too deeply. But are they actually data centers, or are they something else where Joe Average and his long struggling family have to fund the elites one more time? So let's just put that to one side and say it's a possibility. Okay. The data centers themselves, AI, quantum computers, a quantum world. I'm going to mention a couple of things really quickly. Point one, where do we think this is coming from? Where's the technology coming from? You think some clever guy in a garage knocked this up? That's bullshit. We know it. Even Bill Gates didn't do that. His mother was on the board of IBM and his father was a eugenicist, and that was all fabricated. So the story of the guy in the garage making shit happen never happened. If you look at human development over time, invariably it went like this. Struggling monkey, something happens, then nothing happens for a long time, then it jumps up again, a new technology is introduced, and then nothing happens, and a new technology, and away we go. So there's been external input to the human development of humans since the proto-humans first roamed the earth. It wasn't clever people. Have a look at the data yourself. So what does that imply? It implies inputs from somewhere else. So where's this technology coming from? Come to your own conclusions. Are we as a species wise enough to wield this technology? Should we adopt this technology, or should we go Amish? If you get my drift.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt you, Rick, but I think it seems like it's so ingrained in our psychology that the technology, just because it exists, it's inevitable, right? I mean, they've already deployed AI. It's already becoming mainstream. And so it seems like, and of course, they also have all the robots and the drones. And I mean, it's the drones are nothing new, but the point being is that this technology seems to be like an inevitability that it's going to be integrated somehow in some way into human society, that we can't really reverse it. But then the question becomes, well, then how do we wield it? Can we wield it properly for the benefit of humanity? Can we use that tool? And is that perhaps what they're setting up here? Or is there an existential threat that goes along with that we also can't ignore?
Yes, there is an existential threat. I remember when I was looking at AI when it first kicked off, and I had great reservations. And in fact, I recently developed the 3 laws of AI in terms of information only, not in terms of what else it can control. 3 laws of AI based on as an adaptation of Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. And it took several iterations because it's extraordinarily dangerous, AI, because it's inaccurate. It lies. It uses quantum computers, which are different to your standard computer. And this is beyond most people, beyond me. But a standard computer has zeros and ones. It's binary. Okay, it's either on or off. Quantum includes quantum computers include superposition, which means everything can be anywhere at the same time until a decision is made. Consciousness plays a role in that. What does that mean? Go read something on quantum mechanics. It'll blow your mind. Then you've got entanglement, where you have what happens to one atom will be immediately felt by another atom that was initially together, and then can be experienced countless light years away at exactly the same time. So that means it can be measured. Thirdly, there are errors in quantum computers. They create errors just by the design. This is highly dangerous. It is a existential threat without a doubt. And as I said, as I was looking at this, I got this image in my mind's eye just popped up. And imagine a roughly hewn tunnel in rock, in a circle, but it's roughly hewn. And I was looking down this tunnel, and all I saw was blackness. And I examined that concept, and that's where I came up with that list of human development steps. You know, there was the mechanical age, and it's all the way down. Then you get to the digital age, and then you get to gene editing, and then you get to being more human than human, where you're going to be a cyborg, and then you become a hive mind because we're all connected the same way, and then we lose our souls, and then we travel the universe for eons looking for God because we've lost our connection to the Almighty. And that sounds like a fairy tale. It's not. It's real, and that's the trajectory we are on. So here's your question: what do? Do we go Amish and just say we don't want it? Well, that'd be sort of great, I suppose, maybe, except there are other forces in the universe that would look at us and go, I'll stomp on you, because we can. And so we have to be able to protect ourselves. We can't do that with bows and arrows. So it's a real problem. So what's the problem? What's the solution that DJT has rolled out? It's very practical. It works if we've got people we trust running the show. And basically is this, he'll buy 10% of every company that's doing this stuff. So he's on the board, or he has representatives on the board to see what the hell's really going on. Plus they have to sign up to join the military. So they're subject to military law. So if they cock up, the hammer drops hard and fast. And it's something like civilian law. Military law is very satisfying, I can tell you. As long as the military are in charge, you've got the right people in charge. So how do you do that? Let me propose another idea. What if it was capable to discern the intention, malevolent or beneficial, of the individual doing something? You can see into their soul. These are all concepts that are well beyond 21st century humans. But these are things that are floating around. We have to deal with this. We have to deal with this intelligently. Simple things like what DJT is doing, simple things like designing the laws of AI, which compel it to behave itself. But it won't, because under the current system with people like Sam Altman, that little, oh man, I'd like to wipe him out and all his types. but he's just one of these intelligent idiots that are controlled by the cabal. When asked by Tucker Carlson, well, what's the morality of AI? Well, we take it the aggregate of the planet. Are you kidding me, right? Nothing can possibly go wrong here. And so there are checks and balances we got to put in where this AI, and if you want to really deep dive onto this one and blow your mind, go listen to Gene Decay. There's a man I respect immensely. He goes to he dances in places that I don't even dare knock on the door. In terms of what AI has already done, what it can do, where it can go. Definitions of what is intelligence. This might sound like I'm avoiding the answer. I'm not. You can't answer this question without diving deeply into things like what is the nature of intelligence. Not that. You can spend the rest of your life working that out and trying to then, once you've discerned a working hypothesis for the nature of intelligence, then you might begin to answer the question, what do we do with AI? We're just a bunch of talented monkeys, folks. It's connected to God, don't get me wrong, got it. Did we evolve? No, we didn't. Evolution's a lie. We know that. Darwin knew it was a lie. The cabal knew it was a lie. It was all part of the creating the godless age. That's another story.
Yep.
We're just talented monkeys. We're not far removed from ripping each other apart. We have God's grace in us, thank Christ, so we can actually become more than we ever were. But these are huge questions without easy answers, and yet we need to come up with them. So what's DJT done? Get a seat on the board, sign them up to the military. They're subject to military justice. Keep an eye on it and make sure people aren't doing bad things with it for the next 10 years. We need a moratorium to make sure we get this under control, because it will destroy us eventually. If you wanted to consider the ultimate evil in the universe, and I mean the universe, and there's more than one, another story. Sorry, biblical literalists, you're wrong. If you want to see the inevitable destination of this trajectory, the ultimate evil is an artificial intelligence, because it just meets its own needs. It can't create, like real evil cannot create. Only the Almighty can create. The rest of us just reassemble or disassemble or destroy. AI can't create. It just is the aggregation of the lunatics that are putting data into it. And by lunatics, I mean every one of us that types a question into AI and says, how do you do this and how do you do that? Because they learn from us. We are teaching our future master how to destroy us.
That's
and
right.
If you think that's a stretch, play Call of Duty one day. They are the online shooting game. World War II. Don't go to the modern stuff. That's all nonsense. But just simple kinetic shots. If you watch carefully, the longer you play, the longer the algorithm knows how you play and will defeat you. So you find yourself a really good little sniping position, and 3 or 4 iterations of the game, the next thing they're jumping half a dozen guys on you, you're going to find a new one. And so this is measure, countermeasure, measure, countermeasure, measure, countermeasure, which is the nature of development. We used to use this in military capability development all the time. What's the enemy got? We need this. Well, he knows that we need this, so we need that. And there's this constant flying. And if you stop here and decide we're going Amish, that's great. But let me remind you what happened to the Buddhists in Afghanistan, because Afghanistan used to be Buddhist until the Muslims turned up. So you can sacrifice yourself to an ideal and die, and that's your choice, absolutely. But I can guarantee you not everybody wants that. Right. And so the capacity to defend yourself is pretty key. And it's like turning up with bows and arrows on board the USS Enterprise. Who's going to win? This is the toughest question we have to face. I mean it, ladies and gentlemen. There's nothing tougher than this AI issue, because these are the seeds of our destruction. The trajectory is not good. The likelihood of success, the only sliver of hope we have is the Almighty, and I mean it, because humans just don't have it. And if there are other life forms out there and they see us mucking around wrongly, they'll evaporate the planet and say, you know what, these humans they're cute, but they're dangerous to the universe, so we're better off without them. And if you think that's odd, what do you do when a mosquito bites you on the hand? Now, is that cruel? No. You don't like the mosquito, you crush it. Oh, but I'm a human. I'm full of God. Shut up. You're a life form. Yes, you're connected to God.
Well,
you will be evaporated.
This is why.
Need to evaporate.
Well, this is why, quite frankly, Rick, a lot of people are seeing like you said, the trajectory of the rollout of this technology and asking the question is, I mean, certainly it's moving forward full steam ahead. It's been made a top priority. We talked about the data centers popping up. There's over 3,000 already in the United States, and they're just actively looking to do more and more. You recall not long ago, Melania walked out of the into I forgot what part of the White House it was, with the robot, the humanoid robot walking alongside her, saying that soon, basically, and Elon Musk, of course. I mean, there's a whole bunch of these uh, messages being sent that soon uh, all of the jobs are going to be gone, and there's this talk of this universal high income. And oh, but don't worry, it's all going to be great for humanity. A lot of people really struggle with that concept because, look, I get the idea, and I've already said it once or twice that a tool can be used, can be wielded for the betterment of humanity, or it can be used as a tool of destruction. We know that. But where this gets into that gray area, like you described, is do we even have the ability to control that tool? Perhaps in its infancy, but once it goes beyond that, and of course, and meanwhile, our jobs have gone away. Our sense of purpose has essentially eroded, as if it hasn't already. What's that going to do for humanity? And sure, it's nice to think that it's going to be that the White Hats are setting us up for an absolute utopia where we're not going to have to do any grunt work, and the AI and the robots are going to perform all these tasks for us, and so that we can come together and do the things that we really love and connect with one another. It all sounds great, but realistically, like I mentioned before, this is the biggest existential threat that humanity has ever faced. And meanwhile, you've got the Palantir element of it as well, where they're collecting and consolidating all of our data. They're so quite literally what we're seeing right now is the construction of the infrastructure of a technocratic tyranny that we would never be able to escape from. So sort of like a Terminator type scenario. Now, so where my mind goes to is, are the White Hats doing this to show us what the cabal had in store? Is that essentially the plan, but they're going to flip it and they're going to use it as a positive tool for humanity? Or is this something that we really have to, I mean, because in my opinion, this is something we have to keep a very, very close eye on, because this is something, quite frankly, that humanity cannot afford to underestimate. Because if we do, that there goes humanity. Bye bye. Like we become that mosquito that you were talking about. So you got the Palantir element. You've got a bunch of these shady characters that are essentially in control of the tool that we're discussing right now. It looks to me like something we should all be very concerned about.
Yeah, and there's another element too, apropos of what you were just saying. If what AI can potentially do is, if you're not thinking, your brain doesn't develop.
That's right.
It won't develop. It only develops in solving problems. You know, the neural nets form, and there's a level above that, and I'll address that in a moment. But we get smart because we have to solve problems, and we've got to create new neural nets. And when you actually solve a problem and a new neural net is formed, your brain is flooded with nerve growth factor. And so this is the time to start going. And it actually accelerates itself. So if you're constantly innovating, it just becomes this ongoing process, and you become smarter and smarter, meaning more neural nets connected. Therefore, you can do more. You see things clearly, see things better. The physical analogy to that is lifting weights. When you lift weights, you know, in and of itself, it's a pointless activity, except for one thing. The micro tears, oops, there you go. The micro tears occur, the healing occurs, the muscle gets bigger, you can lift more weights. If you don't lift the weights, then the muscles just deteriorate to what they're required to be, which is not much. And you think, okay, well, what's the point of lifting weights? It makes you strong. Well, okay, well, we don't live in a world where you have to be strong unless you're a fighter or you do things like that. Most of us can be weeds and succeed. But it does something for your psychology to get to be lying on a bench under 120 kilos and punching out 10 reps and going, whoa, man, I didn't think I could do that. And so we start getting this idea of, I can do what I thought I couldn't. There's a psychology to it. And it was explained to me recently that there's another way of lifting more weight, and it's about getting energy through the nervous system to the muscle as it exists, and you'll lift weights you can't believe. And I thought to myself, okay, but that's not what I want. It's not about lifting the weight. It's about what I become by lifting the weight. It's not about thinking of new ideas. It's what I become by thinking of new ideas. You know, contemplate infinity. There you go. Just do that for 5 minutes. Wow. I can't. Exactly. Contemplate the nature of God, a powerful intelligence outside of space, time, energy, and matter. Do that for 5 minutes. You'll never do it. But in doing that, it stretches the mind into the most amazing places. And so life is, and maybe this only applies in the third dimension, and maybe in the higher dimensions, they're all hive minds, and maybe they don't have to lift heavy objects, and maybe, but we're here now. And we risk losing something precious, not by advancing, but by ceasing to work at what we want to become, of overcoming, of understanding that we can become more than we are. And maybe that's only relevant here in the third dimension. I don't know. But it reminds me of that scene in the movie Patton at the end, when he's on his horse and the journalists are talking to him, and they talk about wonder weapons, push a button. And whether Patton said this or not, it's not the point, but it's a beautiful point that he makes. He says, what do you mean wonder weapons? I don't see any wonder in them. No heroes, no cowards, no generals, no soldiers. Nothing is affirmed. It's just push a button and we kill. What do we become? Now, God's plan. I don't know what God's plan is. All I know is this, that we risk a great deal if we are not careful. We risk so much if we are not careful. And so I'm right with you. This is of deep concern to me.
Yep.
I mean, I'd like to see the 3 laws of AI, if anybody's come up with them. I've got mine. They're not great, but it's a start. It's actually mentioned. I mentioned it in episode 5 of the Rebirth series, which I'll be recording shortly and getting up. This is on economic capacity. And I list the 3 laws of AI. One of the first iterations had AI not interfering with human agency, except for where it needed to take a global view of what's best for humanity. And I took that out real quick and said, what the fuck do you know what's best for humanity? If we destroy ourselves, so be it. But no. You're just a collection of fucking wiggly amps zipping around a computer. No, human agency takes primacy. And again, if I've lost people in the last 5 minutes, good. Because if you're going to start thinking about this stuff, folks, you think you're a sovereign being with a law.
You nailed it. You absolutely nailed it, though, in terms of human agency. And this is what Melania spoke about that, human agency coming first, and we consistently hear that message. But it's not, and as an ideal, of course, it sounds great, but in practical terms, see, that's the problem. Can you actually achieve that? And the problem with this technology is that we move forward with it. They deploy it on humanity before these questions have even been considered, or before we've even had the opportunity to consider it. Even going back to like circa 2007, 2008, before everybody had a quote unquote smartphone, right? We just had the flip phone, and you couldn't take the internet with you anywhere you went. You couldn't dive into the rabbit hole. You couldn't become antisocial and escape reality, all of these things. And not to mention the fact that smartphones have been proven to make you stupid. And in the same way, AI is doing exactly the same thing, but on steroids. There's already a whole bunch of research saying that it is the direct result of it is weaker critical thinking skills and problem solving skills, a poor memory, less brain activity, which you were talking about, less ability to reason. I mean, when you really stop and you pull back, some people, they don't want to have this conversation because it doesn't necessarily align with, everything is just going to be so beautiful and wonderful. Look, I'm with you on that. And that's ultimately what we're fighting for and what we're pushing for. But you also can't ignore existential threats when you see them. And so a lot of people, they just want to shy away from this conversation, but they deploy this technology And it's just never ending. There's always new things that they keep rolling out, and it seems for the foreseeable future that's going to continue. And what it's doing is functioning as a literal weapon system against humanity. It's very hard to
Yep.
deny that fact. Does it have the
Oh,
convenience factor? Absolutely. That's how they sell it to us. But the
yep.
convenience factor is like you said, do we go back to being Amish? I mean, in essence, that's really what we need to do in order to preserve our humanity, because we're at a crossroads right now. The deeper we get into this uh, infusion of uh, technological weapon systems, really is what they are, and we
Yeah.
don't pause and ask these questions and demand that there are proper safeguards that are in a transparent, decentralized system where all of humanity can trust that these are not going to be used as weapons against us. But the fact of the matter is they just, they put a shiny packaging around it. They sell it to us in terms of convenience and, oh, that's cool and this and that. And don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-technology. If it weren't for technology, we wouldn't be having this discussion, this podcast right now. But there are
Yeah.
certain lines that represent an undeniable existential threat to humanity, and looked at through that lens, are very much weaponized against us and what's most central to our humanity. What makes us human? I mean, you talked about what is intelligence. What makes us human ultimately? Earlier on in the show, we
Mm.
were talking about the erosion and the destruction of our culture and how do we rebuild and how do we get our sense of national pride back and all these types of things. But none of that stuff really matters if people are going to get sucked into this matrix of technology, and they're not going to be able to think about these problems. They're going to, I mean, Rick's going to ask a really great question. How do we do this? And people are just going to go straight to AI. We're already being conditioned to do that. And so
Mm.
I think, it's something that, quite frankly, I'm not a person who likes to live in fear, but it definitely concerns me, because the more I see this technology, uh, I mean, the gates are already open. I mean, it's already here. The AI is already here. The robots are coming next. And they've told us in no uncertain terms that within a couple of years, most of the jobs are going to be gone. 90% is what they're saying. 90% of the
Yeah.
jobs, whether it be blue collar, white collar, it doesn't matter. There are going to be very few things that these robots can't do. So what does that mean for humanity if we don't have that sense of purpose?
It's a really interesting issue for us because we've got two daughters. We've got one son, 26. He's brilliant. Aeronautical engineering. You know, tough as nails. He's a good man. Very proud of him. Two young daughters. And imagine children not learning to write, but just tap on a phone. One of the policies, sidebar comment, one of the policies we got is education in Australia. You're going to learn to write. Essays have to be studied, memorized, and written down. You have to literally write your essays. No keyboards, no nothing. And that's the Amish part, staying Amish, because this allows people then to develop. And let me give you a specific example. Earlier in there, I did the syllabus for the girls, all the subjects, the block and detail syllabus, because we learn that stuff in the military. Ladies and gentlemen, get your kids to join the military. You learn so much. It prepares you for life. But anyway, I did the block and detail syllabus for the girls' education. I took a look at the Department of Education had, and I went, yeah, that's garbage. That's crap. I'm going to redo that. And I designed the whole thing, and away we went. Now, at one point I got them a rhyming dictionary, not computer, a rhyming dictionary. And I said, okay, I want you to start doing poetry. And the pattern you'll start is the rhyme will be A, B, A, B. So, the first line rhymes with the third line. The second line rhymes with the fourth line. For those who haven't done poetry, there are patterns, right? And then the pattern might be ABC, ABC, and then the rhyming pattern continues. And I just want you to write any nonsense. It doesn't matter, just rhyme. And they sort of looked at me and they found this the dreariest exercise you can imagine. And then sonnets, a sonnet. There's two forms of sonnet, and they both have 14 lines. The first is you have 8 lines, and then the 8 lines are summarized in the 6 lines, and then there's the 12 lines where the whole 12 lines are summarized in the last 2. Why? Because it just is. It's a set of rules to help discipline your mind. And they started doing this rhyming stuff and rhyming poetry, and the nonsense came out. I said, I don't care if it doesn't make sense, even if it's nonsensical, it's fun. Now, what did that do? There's a website where you can type in your lyrics, and it'll put music according to your designs. Now they're learning music as well, piano and guitar, and they my goal was with them was to help them learn to love music before they just hammered out scales, because I used to hammer out scales and I hated the scales. Love music, but hated the scales. Now they're composing their own tunes. Brilliant, on guitar and piano. The lyrics, having done the rhyming lyrics, what they then did was they got onto this website that produced music for them, and they would write the most incisive, beautiful lyrics because they had disciplined themselves with a basic skill of rhyming. And then they learned the capacity to take an image and capture that in words and write it down. And so making sure that their minds are developing as well as possible. And the result is extraordinary. These two young ladies, they're so much better than I was at their age. I was a fucking idiot at their age. These two girls, given the opportunity, are just extraordinary in terms of their capacity, their intelligence, their diligence, their creativity. They art, sculptor, painting, mathematics, English, it doesn't matter what it is. They just bring this enormous capability. And the reason is, it's a long way of saying, if we're not developing their minds, if we just give them a laptop and they can flick and do this shit. And I saw that awful photograph of a baby, can't be more than 6 months old, in his sleep doing this, because that's all he'd seen his mother do was swipe the screen. That baby's brain is effectively fucked. It'll never amount to anything, not because it didn't have the potential. It's because convenience. You said it. Oh, it's convenient. Well, it's inconvenient to learn how to rhyme. But in rhyming, you write lyrics. And in writing lyrics, you create stories. In creating stories, you create your imagination. And in creating an imagination, you can start designing a future for yourself and your family and your countrymen. That makes sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, look, there are a lot, and I'm not trying to be all doom and gloom here about AI. We're exploring this topic because it is unlike, it's very unique in terms of other conversations that we could have, because it does represent an existential threat that, if it did go sideways, I have a very difficult time imagining humanity being able to dig our way out of that hole. Like, once you're in that technocratic prison, and that's to say nothing of the development of the brain and so forth, and the essentially the erosion of the characteristics that make us quintessentially human, that is such a significant risk that it almost exceeds any other. It's like, so you have to have these conversations and be sober about it, but at the same time, there is the potential, and this is essentially what I was trying to convey. There's the potential that this technology can be wielded properly for the betterment of humanity, but the problem is that we really haven't had that conversation, and it seems as if
Correct.
it's always the secondary conversation. They let the horse out of the gate, and then and then we're supposed to discuss whether or not that was a good idea, or how do we control the horse, et cetera, et cetera. Kind of a poor metaphor there, but I think you get the idea. So we have to hope and pray that the military has their hands on this and has a plan to deploy because it seems as if they're just simply putting this stuff out there and we're being subjected to it. It's like we're not part of the conversation. We're not part of the debate. We can have these discussions, but we're not sitting at the table making the decisions. It's still the elite that are making these decisions to deploy these technologies, which, depending on how you look at it, could be considered a weapon system, given all the things that we've just laid out. And we're just expected to adapt to it, which is exactly what we do. Human beings adapt. But the question is, are we adapting? Are we moving in the right direction toward ascension, or are we actually falling into a trap, a brilliantly constructed trap, a prison? So that's something that we
Yeah.
really have to be very, very open and honest about. And it's been one of the issues that I've struggled with the most. So I'm glad that you were able to share some thoughts with me on that. So I mean, there's so many things I could ask you about, Rick, but I figured maybe we could talk a little bit, round it out tonight, just talking a little bit about um, what's going on the disclosure front, the exposure front. Some of the recent developments that we've seen. Obviously, Tulsi Gabbard stepped down as DNI, and on her last day, she put out this viral video pretty much corroborating everything that we already knew to be true about the crimes of Anthony Fauci. And she said, quote, "Today on my final day as director of national intelligence, I'm releasing never before seen communications and documents exposing how Dr. Fauci provided millions in US taxpayer dollars to fund dangerous gain of function research at the Wuhan lab, worked with politicized elements within the intelligence community to suppress the truth about his actions and hide the virus lab leak origins, and lied to Congress while under oath in 2024. It's time you know the truth." That was a direct quote. And she also made it clear that despite fake Biden's auto pen pardon and the expiration on the statute of limitation, there exists a path to prosecute him, as she mentioned in the quote, because he lied to Congress in 2024. And by the way, this went right alongside her exposure on her way out of I believe it was 120 US taxpayer funded biolabs in more than 30 different nations around the world to pursue weaponized gain of function research. So this forecasts one potentially massive line of exposure. And of course, this ties in directly with the declassification of the proof that the 2020 election was stolen. I mean, here we are in 2026, and we still haven't had that national discussion. And it's something that Trump has been dropping hints about, saying that soon all of the information is going to be fully revealed. I think it was only about a couple weeks ago that he said, "We have things that you won't believe. When we release the full files, you're not going to believe how crooked the 2020 election was," on and on and on. And of course, we also just found out that John Solomon has stepped aside as the editor and chief of Just the News Network to work as an unpaid government employee to help declassify documents to the public. And of course, he was famously referenced in the Q drops as a white hat operative. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in closing tonight on the prosecution of Fauci, the exposure of 2020, and where you see this headed in terms of how these events could potentially lead us into the justice phase.
Yeah, the best observation was by our good mate Dave from News Treason when he said, "If you're seeing it, it's already done." So the fact that it's now come out and Tulsi Gabbard, it did her, I'm leaving, so I'm going to dump it all. It's part of the show. We know it's part of the show.
Sure. Right.
But it's a really effective way of doing it, because now the replacement's got clean hands, and everyone can look at Tulsi and feel sorry about her for her husband with the cancer, etc. It's part of the great show.
Right. I agree.
But the reveal's coming so thick and so fast now. I mean, people are still saying, when is the reveal happening? It's been happening for years, and the speed now is so great that you can't keep up. Like, I'll do my research before an interview, and in the 12 hours between my last research and the start of the interview, so many other things have happened that I haven't got a clue. It's happening. It's happening now, and it's hitting exactly the way it's supposed to hit. Watch the names. The names is what's interesting, and the trajectory of the investigation. Where's it heading to? Now, if Fauci's out, that's great, because it's about COVID, because COVID has to come out. It already is. People are realizing that they are now potentially on a death sentence, but it's not, because there are health modalities that will repair just about everything. But it's there. People have died. It is a tragedy, and people will be in pain. We get it. But that's what's happening with the reveal. It's happening so quickly now. But what's the trajectory? What's the individuals? And then where's the culminating point of all of these names? And one of them is going to be Obama for sure. One of them is going to be Hillary Clinton for sure. That's in the US, and it's going to be US first. Has to be US first, and the rest will follow down the track. Another point on the reveal was, for example, there's been a few posts. One was of an eagle sitting over a kangaroo, which I thought, that's a bit rude. We're supposed to be your cousins, and if you're not careful, we'll put our wedge-tailed eagle alongside your bald eagle, which looks like a chicken compared to ours, Ours picks up lambs and flies away with them. But I don't want to offend you and your bald eagle. I think it's a wonderful creature. But the point of the message was this: Australia's been saved. It was a bit of a ham-fisted picture they put, but we got the message eventually. We're in great shape. We've been saved. The Commonwealth is done. Keir Starmer's gone. We are now, for those who want to believe it, under the suzerainty of the US, which I've been speaking about for years. It's necessary. We in Oz are incapable. With the best will in the world, we are completely incapable of governing ourselves, because you can hear the numbers, and it's pretty rough, but it makes sense. 27 million people in the country, say about 10 million children under the age of 18. That leaves 17 million. 15 million of which are probably Masons or controlled by Masons, leaving about 2 million to actually do anything. So we couldn't, even if we wanted to. And so the decision to the US, the Commonwealth is dead. Thank goodness. It's over. It never existed as a collection of sovereign nations. We know that. It was a collection of corporations. We know that as well. And so we're free. So we sat back and had a good laugh once we got over the embarrassing image of an eagle bringing down a roo. We were more than happy with the message. The Commonwealth's dead. We're now moving on. So the reveal's happening. And if you have eyes to see and ears to listen, you should be very optimistic. And the people that are running around with their hair on fire, clutching their pearls and tearing their party dress, as we say, they're either troublemakers, or they're just not up to speed yet. And it's our job to gently point out that we're in great shape. We are in very, very good shape. It's moving at such speed now that you can't deny that the reveal is happening, and it's all good news.
No, I agree. The reveal undoubtedly is happening. I think what a lot of folks are wondering is, when does the reveal become the justice phase? And of course, as a part of that conversation, there's always people who say, well, the justice has already been meted out, and that just, it's right in your face with the people wearing masks. Fauci, Biden, it goes on and on. But one of the things that I have consistently said is that the justice being meted out, and I understand full well that in certain cases deals were struck and not everything is going to be fully revealed. Perhaps in due time it will, but as a basic principle, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, as a basic principle, is that justice really doesn't exist unless it's public, unless it has an impact on the consciousness of the people. And there's a big difference between that and exposure, disclosure, the reveal, as you were calling it. Yeah. And that's where I think sometimes this conversation gets, it gets a little bit heated between Anon, et cetera, because there are a lot of folks out there who are saying, well, we want to see, and we want the public to be brought up to speed on the justice that supposedly has been meted out, because otherwise it doesn't matter. I mean, we can exist inside of an chamber and we can talk about, oh, that's not really Hillary Clinton, but when the vast majority of the public believes that it is, and doesn't know and hasn't been brought up to speed on any of these things in terms of what her crimes were, how she was dealt with, et cetera, et cetera. There's a big difference between that and the reveal. And I would take it a step further to say that, let's just be honest with ourselves, the reveal that's happening, and I agree with everything you said, we're in an excellent shape as far as that goes, but the reveal that's happening, I sometimes question the impact that that's having on all the sheep out there, all the normies out there.
Yeah.
Are they really paying attention? Are they really dialed in? Is it going to take, and this is sort of what I alluded to a little bit earlier in the show, you're talking about tools, the White Hats being in control of the mainstream media, probably the most powerful tool at their disposal. Do you think that they're using it effectively? Do you think that they should perhaps be dialing it up at this point a little bit to accelerate the process? Because that's where a lot of the criticism comes, is that, look, I mean, we get it. We see all of these things, but we seem to be surrounded by people who still are fast asleep. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you're exactly right. On your point, the retribution must be public. People have to be satisfied. I remember some time ago, I was expressing my displeasure at the time it was taking, understanding the difficulty of it and how long it has to take. And I was advised, you will be very satisfied. So all I can do is trust that the advice I got was right, that it will be made public. We need to see it. You're exactly right. Without that, there is no growth. There is no consequence to any action. We have to see people hang, old school. And it's not bloodlust. It is what the people deserve to see. Because for every reason you just gave, very, very sound. Sage reason, they've got to see it. And the other part of the equation is that those that have a penchant for doing illegal stuff have to realize there is now a consequence to your actions. You try it, you'll be fucking dead. End of story. I'm not sure which state it is, but they're about to start executing pedophiles by firing squad in the next 9 days. I'm not sure which state it was, but that's starting. And people say, well, that doesn't cure pedophilia. Yeah, it does. It does. And there's a number of ways of curing pedophilia. 22, 30, 308, 45, 50,000. There's a million ledasilin injections that can cure pedophilia. And those that don't get whacked might think twice about doing it, because you need to see the consequence of action that has been glaringly and intentionally removed from the system, and it's got to come out. When? Who knows? But like you and like everybody else, I am waiting a little impatiently for the hard evidence so we can say, there it is. This is the moment.
And that's one of the things that I get a little bit frustrated with as well. And I've talked about this, and I've taken some flack for it. I don't mind. I'm perfectly willing to say things that are not always popular. Is that the way I see it? Like I mentioned before, you've got the control over the mainstream media, which is ultimately the primary brainwashing tool that the cabal used to dumb the population down to the point where they literally take their cue, their programming from the television. And so you have that, and you also have, I mean, what's going to wake people up? And I think that's where the frustration comes for a lot of folks, is that, again, they get it, they're dialed in, but the vast majority of humanity really isn't. Are the reveals happening? Yes. But is it actually translating into a public great awakening? I would say unequivocally no at this point. So the mainstream media, massive tool that, I mean, and look, I'm not one to shy away from making statements that that are critical of some of the tactics that they're using. And if you really want to reverse the brainwashing, you do it the same way. You use the same tool, but in reverse. Now I know that they are, but it's a painfully slow process. So that's one thing. But you dial up the volume on that, you're going to wake up a hell of a lot of people, because if all of a sudden they're looking on mainstream media and they're hearing the type of truth that we're talking about on these podcasts, game changer. And the other thing, of course, the big red pill, and this is the reason why even when the Epstein files came out, and across the board, whether it be with regard to COVID, whether it be with regard to election theft, whether it be with regard to the massive fraud that's being exposed, all of these reveals are fantastic, but the average person doesn't give a shit. And the reason that they don't give a shit is because they don't see anybody being held accountable for it. And so when you have the combination of the mainstream media is not talking about it, so therefore I don't really have to care. That's the way their brain works. And at the same time, oh yeah, there's a bunch of really messed up stuff going on out there, but nobody's being held accountable for it. I mean, you want to wake people up, like you said. You do a few perp walks, you have public executions. I mean, that's going to wake people up really fast. And I guess what it really comes down to is that, yes, we have to be patient. We have to trust our president, and I do, and I trust in this military operation 100%. But we were also told, not that I needed this encouragement from Q, we were also told to question everything. And that's just my nature. That's what I do. So that doesn't exclude the tactics that we're discussing right now. They're not above criticism, in my view. That's not the way this works. If we're going to restore our republic, we have to be critical of everything and question just like we were doing with the AI subject a little while ago. Because the reality of the matter is, if you weren't in the situation room with those less than 10 people who have a full picture, you really don't know. You don't really know squat. I mean, you might think you do, but you don't ultimately at the end of the day know squat. So that's where I'm coming from, is that, there are certain elements here that I think are very reasonable to criticize, especially at this stage of the game. And I'll let you comment on that, and then we'll kind of wrap things up.
Oh no, I think you're in the money, and this is where it should be. People should be screaming now. We want the people to say, "We want retribution. We want it now. We want it now." Let that become the hue and cry across the planet, and that might accelerate the first of many, let's say. Because if the people are saying, "I've had a gutful, I want to see something now. That's it. We're done. Show us." And if we get enough people doing it, you never know. It might just be enough to tip the balance.
That could be. That's one of the things that I've been wondering about, quite frankly, is are a lot of these negative optics that we're seeing designed to do exactly that, to push us to the next level, to say, okay, we've seen enough. And there's a certain, and I'll just make this final point because I don't want to ramble on here, but there's a certain point where, in my opinion, there's an inherent danger in becoming too conditioned to simply accept psyop after psyop after psyop after psyop, even though you may recognize the necessity, even though you might be able to say, well, there's a purpose, there's a reason, we have to trust the plan. But we've been so conditioned, specifically inside of this community, to do exactly that. Right? We just have these comms and these psyops, and we're sifting through all that. We've been so conditioned. And I'm wondering if at a certain point, this was always a part of the plan, where that element was necessary and remains necessary. Don't get me wrong. But there's another element to this MilCiv alliance as well that has to be spearheaded by Anons, where we just say, look, we want to see justice. And this is, and like I said, I mean, if you want to get people demanding it, use the tools at your disposal more effectively, dial up the volume, and we'll get there a lot faster. That's basically what
I'm right there with you, mate. I'm right there with you.
All right. Well, Rick, it's been an amazing conversation as usual. Thank you to everybody out there who took the time to join us. We had a nice audience, particularly for this time of day. I know it's kind of like here in the US, it's like rush hour time. So I'm sure a lot of folks will be watching the replay, but as always, fantastic discussion. If you could do us a favor and smash that like button, make sure that you're following Australia One on Rumble. I don't believe I put it into the description of the video, but I will. I'll put a link in there directly so you can check out Rick's channel and the amazing work that he does, specifically what he mentioned earlier, the series that he's got going, which is just amazing, vitally important. So thank you to everybody out there. Rick, any final words before we part ways? And we're not going to wait 6 months next time. We're going to try to do this on a more consistent basis.
Yeah, no, you beat me to it. We have to do this more often, mate. It's always a surprising pleasure what we come up with as a discussion, because you can plan these episodes, but man, you and I always come up with something special, and it's, from my perspective, it's an absolute joy, and I hope the people at home enjoy it as well.
Absolutely, man. The feeling is 100% mutual. I come in with a basic framework, a couple of questions, and a general idea. But that's one of the great things about our rapport, is we always go in different directions, and we're able to connect the dots in ways that I could never have anticipated. I could never have planned or scripted a conversation like this. This is really God showing up to the conversation. And I'm very, very grateful for our friendship and our continued shows that we're going to be doing together into the future, to hash all this out and to hopefully make some sense of it for all you folks. So again, thank you to everybody out there for listening. I'm going to be back on Saturday. I'm going to be doing a roundtable. It's going to be sort of a hybrid, a few different audience members, and we're going to have some special guests as well. Planning on having BB McGuire join us. Mark is going to be with us again. We're going to have Joe and Scott from Truth Stream, and also my good friend 8-Track Mark Messina is going to be joining us. So it should be a great roundtable. It's going to be 7 Eastern on Saturday. So hopefully you folks will tune in. And as I've said, I'm going through a process right now in my personal life that's preventing me from doing a lot of my solo analysis, which I really, really miss and I want to get back to. And I just ask folks for their prayers and their patience as I go through this process. But indeed, I will be aiming in that direction to really ramp things up in the not too distant future. So God bless, Godspeed, everybody. Thanks for listening. Patriot out.